too long ago, the Pittsburgh Steelers were the reigning champions of the NFL, a powerhouse that could stride onto their home field of Three Rivers Stadium with history and a lot more on their side. In those days, teams like the Cincinnati Bengals would have simply been this week's victim. But now the roles seem reversed. The 1982 Bengals are the defending AFC champions, the Steelers a rebuilding team. Cincinnati has a few things going for them, such as 4 straight wins over the Steelers, such as Coach of the Year Forrest Gregg, who won last week's opener against Houston in impressive fashion. Oh, and there's not a little talent on the Cincinnati varsity either. Gregg's defense looks sharp, and there are few worries with veteran signal caller Ken Anderson at the controls. Last season's Player of the Year has plenty of air support from good receivers and a battering ram to soften defenses on the ground in fullback Pete Johnson. So there's plenty of reasons for smiles in Cincy. But perhaps a sly grin can also be detected on the face of Steeler coach Chuck Noll. Last week, Noll's alleged rebuilding team piled up 36 points en route to an upset of the Dallas Cowboys. As usual, quarterback Terry Bradshaw had a prominent role in that game. The 13-year veteran looks better than ever and seems determined to pull the Steelers out of their 2-year rut. Another familiar face from the glory years is middle linebacker Jack Lambert, who missed the Dallas game with an injury but is back today to face the Bengals. Lambert and only a few others are all that remain from Pittsburgh's storied defense of yesteryear. Rebuilt and revamped, it will be the progress of the Steeler defense that tells how successful Pittsburgh will be in 1982. From Three Rivers Stadium, it's an AFC Central matchup, the Steelers against the conference champion Cincinnati Bengals on the NFL Game of the Week. The Bengal defense had probably watched with horror as the Steelers ripped through the Cowboys in their televised opener, and they were determined not to let Terry Bradshaw get off to a fast start in their game. But those plans went by the boards on Pittsburgh's first possession. Bradshaw carved up Cincy with quick passes to receivers like tight end Benny Cunningham, number 89. And on just the 6th play of the drive, he hit number 82, John Stallworth, for the first score of the game. After a big night against the Cowboys, Stallworth was picking up where he left off. On Stallworth's second touchdown of the year, he bested the Bengals zone with a slant pattern that beat 3 defenders. Pittsburgh led 7-0, but the Bengals were anxious for rebuttal. So the next series saw a carefully calculated drive by quarterback Ken Anderson, who also stayed with short but effective passes. Number 80, Chris Collinsworth, caught 2 passes in the drive, both of which kept him slightly horizontal in the process. But when Anderson looked for Chris a 3rd time near the goal line, the Steelers were ready and able to stop Cincinnati's first serious threat of the day. Number 31, Donnie Shell, made the interception thanks to a deflection by cornerback Dwayne Woodruff. The pass tip and Shell's pickoff enabled the Steelers to keep their 7-0 lead as the first quarter ended. Pittsburgh had stopped the Bengals cold for 15 minutes. Now the Cincinnati defense was quite happy to return the favor. For nearly the rest of the half, Pittsburgh didn't even get a whiff of the end zone. The Bengals started by zeroing in on Pittsburgh's running game and veteran Franco Harris. no Steelers back was able to pierce the Bengal line as Pittsburgh ended the day with just 26 yards on the ground. The Bengal pass rush was just as effective, dropping Bradshaw once while making sure most Pittsburgh completions went to receivers that could do Cincy no harm. But the Bengals weren't able to do much better against Pittsburgh's new name defense. Fullback Pete Johnson was kept in check, and Ken Anderson suffered frequent intrusions in the pass pocket from Steelers Jack Ham and Bob Coors. Then Anderson capped off a thoroughly uninspiring second period by lofting a pass which Donnie Shell turned into his second interception of the game. The former All-Pro is known best for his hard hitting, but every once in a while Shell has days like this one to remind the fans he can still be a most larcenous fellow. While Shell's name was in lights, the Bengals were held in check. But with under 4 minutes to go in the half, Anderson finally got on track and began to move his team. The Bengals ran only once in the 11-play drive and finally got some points for their efforts. Kicker Jim Breach booted an impressive 50-yard field goal to cut the Steeler lead to 7-3. Only about a minute remained when Breach followed with the kickoff, but return man Fred Bohannon, number 23, was able to gain a lot of yardage without taking up a lot of time. Bohannon's 57-yard return was quickly followed by a completion from Bradshaw to running back turned wide receiver Greg Hawthorne, number 27. Hawthorne's gain plus a personal foul by the Bengals put the ball on the 8-yard line. An easy chip shot for rookie kicker Gary Anderson, who blasted it through as time ran out. The underdog Steelers led 10-3 at the half, and the defending champion Bengals seemed more than a little surprised. Last year, the Cincinnati defense finally came of age. After investing top draft choices in the unit, 1981 was the harvest season. Now the Bengals have opposing teams talking to themselves. The Steeler offensive line didn't like what they saw early in the third period. What soon followed, they liked even less. Handling Bradshaw the same way a clumsy bellhop handles bags and luggage commercials, the Bengals stopped the Steelers early, then stepped aside as the offense made its first big play of the game. Chris Collinsworth turned a quick-out pattern into a 35-yard gain. Strong evidence that the sophomore jinx will have no ill effects on last year's rookie sensation. Inside the one, fullback Pete Johnson tried the Steelers line and appeared to be stopped. But the Bengal back was in just enough to give Cincinnati its first touchdown. Steelers, like Donnie Shell, thought the team had held and was somewhat agitated when the referee informed him otherwise. It was also the first rushing score the Steelers had allowed in 8 games. To Pittsburgh's dismay, it counted, and the game was tied at 10 apiece. For the first time in the game, Cincinnati had drawn even. And finally, Shell's energy was used up. Long gone were the sweet memories of his 2 first-half interceptions. Pittsburgh's 7-point lead was all used up too. But fortunately, veteran Franco Harris was not. Despite being the only running back in history to lead his team in rushing for 10 straight years, Franco gained a meager 3 yards against the Bengals. But through the air, he totaled 88 to lead the Steelers. Bradshaw then looked for John Stallworth. Stallworth was ruled out of bounds, but it did serve notice to Cincinnati's defensive backs that Bradshaw was not afraid to try for the long strike. True to form, Terry crossed them up with a short dump under the zone to his big tight end. Benny Cunningham's coming off his finest year ever when in 1981 he caught over 40 passes for nearly 600 yards. This catch netted him 31 yards and gave the men of Steel a 1st and goal at the Bengal 4. With Pittsburgh's move to shorten pass routes utilizing backs and tight ends, Cunningham will be a workhorse in the Steeler attack this season. His second catch of the drive put Pittsburgh back on top. A solid grab and a perfect throw off the rollout by Bradshaw, coupled with a solid block by Steve Corson, number 77, gave the Steelers a 17-10 lead in the 3rd quarter. While Pittsburgh couldn't run all day, Bradshaw gunned them to nearly 300 yards through the air. While Cincinnati could gain next to nothing on the ground, Ken Anderson rifled them to 323 through the skies. Last year, the return to form of veteran Isaac Curtis helped spark the Bengals to their AFC championship. The arrival of Chris Collinsworth didn't hurt either. The hit he received on this catch when Ron Johnson arrived might have hurt a bit, though. The Steelers are a team in transition, a youth movement, if you will. One thing will always remain a Pittsburgh trademark, their physical nature. Close to the goal line, however, you can't get much more physical than the big guy, Pete Johnson, number 46. Most football fanatics across the nation remember how Johnson was stacked up at the goal line repeatedly in Super Bowl 16 in San Francisco's classic goal line stand. Coach Forrest Gregg said he'd hand it to him again in the same situation. Johnson showed why as he scored his second touchdown of the day from inside the 10. Johnson's score deadlocked the game once more at 17, and the best was still to come. Chris Collinsworth would tally 144 yards on 9 catches to lead all receivers. And Anderson used his hot pass catcher as the Bengals moved toward their first lead of the day. Collinsworth caught a pair for 32 yards on the drive. And then running back Pete Johnson got the call from veteran Anderson. Big Pete cruised for 20, and another look reveals that the play worked because number 59 Jack Ham was caught in an inside blitz, and Johnson simply made the catch in the vacated area. With no outside linebacker to contend with, Johnson advanced into Steeler territory, where Jim Breach put Cincy up by 3. Everyone saw the ball go through the uprights, but what you can see is the effort Jack Lambert, number 58, made to block it. Trailing 20-17, Pittsburgh drove to within field goal range. The question remaining, could rookie Gary Anderson make the clutch kick from 42 yards out with time ticking away? Number 1 in the program, number 1 in the hearts of Steeler fans. The youngster from Syracuse answered with a resounding yes. The score was deadlocked at 20 apiece, but 28 seconds remained. And for last year's AFC Most Valuable Player, Kenny Anderson, 28 seconds was more than enough for him to take his Bengals in range for a shot at a winning field goal. Steve Kreider's catch highlighted a 51-yard surge, and it appeared that Breach would give his Bengals their 5th straight win over Pittsburgh. Needless to say, the game would have to be decided in overtime, for with 5 seconds left, Breach's boot never got there as number 47 Mel Blount recovered for the Steelers and ran out the clock. In years past, the Bengals were to the Steelers what the Washington Generals are to the Harlem Globetrotters, an inferior squad without a prayer of victory. But of late, these Bengals have dominated Pittsburgh. Since he won the toss in overtime, but an errant toss quickly cost them the game this time around, when Jack Ham put on the heat and Dwayne Woodruff, number 49, plunged the Bengals into the fire. Woodruff was knocked out of bounds by Anderson on the Bengal 2. Some teams would kick a field goal. Some teams would keep the ball safely on the ground. The Steelers did neither, for on this day, where Pittsburgh could never get their once proud ground game going, they danced with what brung them to this overtime period, the forward pass. John Stallworth cradled the game winner, and Cincinnati's 5-year jinx was abruptly ended on the 4th play of the overtime period. Another look reveals that no one was even near him in the Bengal end zone. Everyone counted the Steelers out this year. At best, they were given an outside chance by the football intelligentsia. But after 2 season opening games, the 2-time world champion Cowboys have fallen, and now the AFC champion Bengals have joined the vanquished as well. The Steelers stand alone at the top of the AFC Central at 2-0 with impressive victories over impressive teams. In this, the franchise's 50th year, what better way to celebrate a half-century of NFL service than by making a bid at a 5th World Championship? If the remaining 14-game schedule shapes up like the first 2, well, as Chuck Noll would probably say, let's just take them one at a time, boys. One thing for sure, these 2 teams will meet again this year at Riverfront Stadium. And there's more than a slight chance that the winner might just wear the AFC Central crown in 1982.